We have with us the President of CII, Mr. Sanjiv Puri. Mr. Puri, welcome to PTI. Let me begin by asking you about CII's expectations from the Modi government. What do you think needs to be done by the government? What are the areas of focus in this tenure that could take the economic growth to the next level?
First of all, thank you for having me here. And let me step back a little and say that in the beginning, the performance of the economy in the previous year, a growth of 8.2% at a time when the world was under some amount of stress, I think is truly remarkable. And we should recognize the reasons or the factors that led to it. I think a lot of it is on account of a lot of the purposeful policy interventions that have happened over the period of time. So that has set up this robust foundation. And so we are starting the next phase, in so to say, on a much more stronger footing. And the model that's been followed in the past is been very clearly purposeful to strengthen the productive capacity of the economy. It's been an inclusive investment-led growth, whilst also allocating resources to find the climate crisis, and at the same time maintaining the fiscal glide path. So broadly, we believe that this approach has worked well, and it certainly should create additional momentum to accelerate the pace of reforms. So from that perspective, there are a set of 14 areas that CII suggests. And of course, when we are saying suggests, there is a role in each one of them for CII and its members and industry as well. It is not that we are saying that everything has to be done by the government, but there are 14 areas we have identified. And if I was to just call on some of the big ones, I think taking the reform process further, the journey, I think it's time now, given that a lot of enablers have been put in place at the center. So there are the next set of reforms that lie at the intersection of center and state, and these are important reforms to strengthen competitiveness of the economy. So we are recommending that some platform be created to build consensus around these big reforms of land, labor, power, agriculture, and also at a national level fiscal sustainability. Now, GST is a great example with how this was accomplished, but whatever is appropriate for this is what we are recommending. The second aspect we are also saying is that the investments in public capex has delivered good results. Not only does it in the immediate term create employment and therefore benefits a lot of people, but also it's strengthening the competitiveness of the economy, it's strengthening the productive capacity of the economy, and this needs to continue to accelerate. We are recommending that it be enhanced by 25%. The revised estimate suggests 16.8. So the additional, we would also suggest, could have more focus in rural areas, be it in terms of housing or agriculture related infrastructure, warehousing, irrigation, and such other areas. The third area that we believe is also important is that India has very important demographic advantage, and this is quite important given that the whole world actually faces demographic challenges. So it's an opportunity, and there is a need to equip and empower the youth with new age skills and the spirit of enterprise. So therefore, the suggestion is that over a period of time, we should look at a higher expense in the education sector, 6% of GDP. So a roadmap for that. Similarly, healthcare up to 3%, a roadmap for that. Greater investment in skilling. And today, whatever data is available seems to suggest that formal skilling is just 5%. The figure is much higher, with global benchmarks. So can we take it to 25% in 2030? And of course, in all this, I think industry is an equal participant in the efforts of skilling and so many other areas. Then specifically coming to the area of livelihoods, that's an extremely important area. I think The schemes like PLI and all have worked well. They have energized sectors, and over a period of time we are seeing that these supply chains there are signs of it getting deeper, more value addition in the economy. So what we think is now an opportunity, given that globalization, there is a trend towards global supply chain diversification. So can we create some impetus to labor intensive sectors like toys, apparel, be it tourism, furniture or other wood based industry, retail, media amongst others. So for this, CII is suggesting an employment linked incentive with some outcome metrics. The digital infrastructure in India has also been transformative. What UPI has done for payments, can ONDC do that? And we believe it can, over a period of time, do it to transform small and micro enterprises. And also, the agri sector by connecting FPOs. So whole ecosystem can get created. We are also, suggesting that in sectors like tourism, it should feature in the, the 7th schedule, the concurrent list, infrastructure status both by the center and state, so that access to funds is cheaper, cost of doing business goes down, and industry would like to work with the government to develop 50 centers of excellence, which was also called out earlier. And in addition to that, I think that given that the connectivity has improved tremendously in India, good tourism infrastructure is already in place, and there's a lot more investment happening in this sector. It's a good time to also examine doing a Incredible India campaign like was done earlier. So these are some of the significant suggestions that we have spoken about. Last piece before I close, I must also talk about rural. Now, besides added investment in public infrastructure, the two broad areas for rural, one is, today agriculture is important for rural. So it's about increasing productivity and resilience of agriculture. So the tools of farmer collective, digitization, the Agri Stack, these are all the right instruments. I think these need to be certainly concluded and taken to scale. There are 1,000 agri-tech players in the country. They have developed various solutions relevant for various crops, but every technology is not affordable to a farmer. So how do you create access is by some kind of a service through local entrepreneurship, just like drone didis. So that kind of ecosystem can get created in a cluster. So ultimately, going from farmer collectives to more crop clusters. The last part I think is also important is that how do we empower the youth in the rural areas on the same issues of skilling, education and healthcare. How does the delivery of that happen? So there are many possibilities. One of the thoughts that's occurred to us is that is it the right time to look at some integrated rural development hubs around cluster of villages, because today physical connectivity is much better. So in reasonable time, people could travel, avail of the facilities and go back, because if one was to do it going to another place and living there, it would be a lot more expensive. And this can be a hub and spoke model, a phygital model. So this will empower the youth and also create the skill bank that the industry needs for growth.
So you spoke about reforms, and some of those reforms require consensus building between the center and states. Now the Modi 3 government doesn't have the kind of electoral mandate which the previous two governments had. It is dependent on allies whose support is crucial. Do you believe this could hold back the government from pursuing tough reforms, bold reforms in sectors like agriculture, power and labor?
So I believe that given that the reform process has yielded results, and there is evidence that has yielded result, that should rather energize everybody to pursue the path of more reforms. And yes, these are difficult reforms because consensus has to be built. Even I must say that in GST a commendable job was done. It required a lot of engagement for consensus building. So it's not an easy process, but yes, I don't think there should be any reason not to pursue them, given the fact that the reform process has shown that it is creating a lot of value in the economy.
Mr. Puri, could you elaborate on the taxation issues faced by the industry, and what are CII's expectations from the full budget?
So some of these, main issues are already covered. What I said in my first response on public capex, social infrastructure, rural tourism, all of that we spoke about. Employment linked scheme. Beyond that, specifics on taxation. You see, one is of course a general norm of simplification, and within that, two areas we are specifically talking about is the multiplicity in TDS, and also harmonization of the treatment of the capital gains tax. On GST, which is not really a budget issue but a tax issue, we are saying it's time to get to a 3-tier structure and include the sectors that are not included: petroleum, real estate, these kind of sectors that are not included. And so these would be the main one. The third aspect is also on customs. What we are saying, over a period of time, we should be looking at 3-tier, primary, intermediate, and finished goods. And of course, there could be some carve-outs and some exceptions as appropriate. But over a period of time, that's what we should aim to achieve here.
So what are the downside risks and challenges to achieving 8% economic growth that has been forecast by CII for the current fiscal?
Yeah, okay. So we have forecast. Let me also tell you why we have forecast, and then I will also tell you the risks. Why in the model, in the model that the economist in CII worked on, I think the factors that worked in favor are, one is the strong foundation that has been laid with the policy framework. This year's high frequency indicators, the initial period, also have been good, positive, encouraging. Then on top of that, the global trade was in a minus territory last year. It is expected to go from minus 1.2 to 2.3 or 2.66%. The other factor is that we expect inflation to be better. Good monsoon. We expect food inflation also to be more modest, and therefore we are a little more optimistic than other forecast on inflation. We believe it will be 4.5%, and so therefore the farm sector will do well. And because of that, we also believe in the second half interest rates moderation will come down. So all this together with all the policy reform that has already been taken, plus we also believe that the policy reform will continue to happen on a accelerated mission mode, and that will provide further impetus. So that's why we believe that the economy will get a similar number in the coming year. Well, the risks are very clearly on account of a lot of external factors, the geopolitical dynamic, the conflict there, and the impacts they have on supply chain, the impacts they have on commodity prices. Climate emergency is a risk. Because of these factors also, if interest rates are held for longer period of time before they ease, that becomes a risk. So these would be the key risks to the economy.
So you spoke about inflation. What are the measures that could be taken to control prices, especially food prices?
So right now, because of monsoons, good monsoons, we expect them to be more modest. If I was to look at a more medium-term area, I think there are 2 or 3 essential points to keep in mind. I think a big enabler, of course, is the agri reform. That's a big enabler. But specifically what needs to happen, I believe we need to build resilience into the agri value chain, so that, and there are various, there's a lot of work done by government agencies, a lot of work done by private sector also, which has established that for many of the problems there are solutions. Maybe not 100% solution, but fair degree of solutions are there. So the question is, how do we kind of implement that at scale, build resilience? The second is we have to do our crop diversification, we have to do our crop planning better, so that the right crops of the right quantity are done. And let me also add that there is a huge opportunity also in India for increasing productivity, and globally also there is a huge opportunity in agriculture sector, because FAO forecasts that by 2050 the world will need 70% more food production. So if we can improve the productivity, build the resilience, I think there is not only are we taking care of food and nutritional security domestically, managing inflation, but also creating additional opportunity for exports over time.
Also, the RBI has been trying to strike a delicate balancing act by holding interest rates to check inflation. When do you see a rate cut happening, if at all, in the current fiscal?
So I would start off by complimenting RBI for the very astute management of the monetary policy. I think they have done extremely well, and that's why the macros in India, both between the fiscal glide path and the monetary policy, have really put India on a very strong macro foundation. I believe that second half of the year we should see the interest rate starting to ease.
So why is the private capex not forthcoming as it should? It has reached 23.8% pre-COVID level. What more does the government need to do for the private sector to start investing?
First of all, let me say that private capex is already happening. It's already happening. It had dipped only in the COVID year to 20.7% of GDP. Now it is 23.8, higher than pre-COVID, higher than several years. And structurally also, if you looked at the gross fixed capital formation between the public sources and the private sources, structurally it is the proportions are similar. We are about between household and private sector, it's about 76-77%, that kind of number. So private capex is in the right trajectory, and it is so because again a lot of right enablers have been put in place by the government. You see, today the health of the banking system is good, corporate balance sheets are better, income tax rates were rationalized, the PLI scheme, ease of doing business. So all of these have put it in a strong foundation. And what more can be done to provide further impetus? Yes, I think there is always room to do more. The journey must go on. Some of the reforms I spoke about earlier, I think continued focused on ease and cost of doing business, larger number of FTAs, greater integration into global value chains. So all of this is going to fuel, will provide further impetus to investment.
So what do you think are the reasons for rural demand to take so long to recover? Has the economic growth that India has witnessed failed to trickle down to the rural areas?
Well, let me put it this way, that we must remember that the economy has gone through multiple stresses, and India has gone through, the world has gone through, and we are not isolated. We've also had the brunt of those impacts. It was COVID related, it was a geopolitical conflict related that has caused disruption in supply chains, heightened inflationary pressures, cost of things have gone up, all external factors. India has managed them much better than anybody else, and that's why our macros are in a stronger footing. And added to that is the challenge that the climate emergency is posing, right? So it's on account of such factors that the cost table has gone up, and despite that, I think the positive point is that India is still on a growth path. India is still on a growth path. In comparison, you will find many parts of the world where it actually shrunk and it's now coming back to pre-COVID levels, or is very modest growth, etc. But India is very in a much better wicket, and we have seen in the fourth quarter that a lot of companies have commented that there are green shoots of pickup, and hopefully with good monsoons, together with the impact of all the reforms that have happened in the past, are going to happen, the public capex, the private capex, the focus on labor-intensive industries, tourism amongst others, all this should start improving it further going forward.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Mr. Puri. Pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.